since we've already covered everything, everybody needs to know how to be a net control operator. Now we get into the point where we talk about practicing. And okay, so anyway, you got to be willing to learn when you're practicing. The idea is to get some practice involved in here so that you can be right when the time has come that you're ready to roll. And during the practice, a couple of things. You have to be willing to learn and accept constructive criticism politely. In other words, someone like me shouldn't jump all over you when you make a mistake. We covered that earlier in these things. Anyway, you should accept the constructive criticism and not get all huffy about it. Contact your local district emergency coordinator, me, to volunteer for the NCS services. And also there are several who are helping me, and you can contact them too directly through the email address that we have set up, ares.harrisburgpa@gmail. And then you contact
I think I'm losing you, Terry.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything either from Terry.
I suspect the spot in the parking lot's not working well.
Doesn't seem like it. You think he's monitoring one of the repeaters?
7-6, try 2-1, and if anybody's up that way, 5-2. Those are the three you usually find him at.
He disconnected, so I think either he knows or he's
Okay.
not.
Oh yeah, he knows.
He says he's trying to reconnect.
Okay, are we back?
You're back.
That's really weird. I don't know why that happened. Now I just have to go back to the right screen. So back to Zoom. You are now the host. Yes, I thought I was.
When you disappear, it then searches for the secondary host. Since there's not one set,
Well,
it keeps searching until you come back and then makes you the host again.
okay, so are we connected again? Okay. Now
Yep.
back to where I was saying. Okay. And also check with your local radio club, which is the Harrisburg Radio Amateur Club. We're the only one that locally here in Dauphin County who has a net that's every Wednesday, except the second Wednesday of every month. And you're welcome to host that as well. And look for a group that handles public service events in your local area, which is actually us here. We do that at ARES, and we'll be hooking up with some of those. We have some coming up, which I'll let Bob talk about here in a little while. And then train with the best NCS you can find, and that person will be able to show you the subtle techniques. Now, that doesn't mean just here. And work as a net controls station as often as you can. And also, it's important to monitor other nets to learn from their examples. Now, let's get into that a little deeper then. Some of those nets could be the stuff you find on HF and passing messages and so forth. And I'll be coming on, we'll be covering that here in a little bit too. Nets of all kinds are out there. Now, there are goofy ones like the rooster net, where you have to be a member of that. You have to stand up on your chair and crow like a rooster, and I don't know, it's all kind of stupid things they have you do to join that one. Those nets are basically you just get in and say hello and say something you did today, and then it moves on to the next person. There are some, they like, the general term is Geritol nets, where old people get on and talk about what they did during the day. And those you don't learn anything on. They're just kind of goofy nets that are out there. But find a good one, and I would recommend some of those that actually handle traffic. One of the biggest fears for a new trainee to overcome is that of copying all the check-ins that come in, as a large barrage of them that come in. And it becomes ear-to-hand coordination is the best way I could ever put it. And it's difficult to master that for some people. And as a net control operator, you can ask for a slower pace and lots of space between check-ins. And another way to practice is to actually listen to all the nets that you can and copy the call signs as best as you can when they come into the net control. And that way you're not on the hot seat, you're just there practicing to learn. Don't worry about getting all of them. Get what you can, just keep going. And if you have access to an HF receiver, some of the hottest, fastest, and nastiest check-ins, the way I put it here, are the ones that you'll hear on the various nets on HF. And trust me, it's worth listening to them. There are all kind of nets, and try to get used to how they're operated by listening to them. And when you can copy 10 or 15 call signs out of the big ones that are loud and check in 15 seconds, you almost have it there. First time you hear one, it's guaranteed to blow your mind. When you hear the big guns that come in. Another source of practice is tune into the contests on the weekends. Contests, I have found, are great training for a net control operator. And listen to how an experienced contester handles the pileups. He'll copy as many stations as he can, and then he'll get down as a burst of calls come in, and he'll say, okay, I've got a group, and then he'll quickly work that list and verify the calls in order. And if he missed one, so what? He'll try again, and he'll get it on the next burst, copy what you can. And one of the finest examples of that at 7.251, it's the East Cars net. No, that's the South Cars net. These guys are great. They'll call, they'll get a barrage of them at one time, and the guy writes them down. He says, okay, here's what I got, and these are the ones we're taking this time. And they're really good at it. And that's a good one to learn from. Join them. They're actually a cool bunch of people to work with. And with something like that, you can become a net control station. East Cars, South Cars, Mid Cars, all them, they're all in 40 meters. But you have to get an HF station. You have to get a general license to be in those. There are others on 2 meters as well, which we'll get into. And when you're net control station, you're always writing something down. If you're always taking an NTS message, writing down your next announcement, making notes, logging net activities, taking check-ins and check-outs and all that. Make sure you have a lot of pencils or pens with you, so you're always ready. You're always listening. While you're listening to any net, practice taking notes of what's going on. This is not the net you're running, but nets that you listen to. You'll develop your own brand of shorthand. Just make sure you can read it back. And it's this time, it'll help you a lot when it comes to your turn to take on an NCS assignment if you develop that. I have a habit of writing in my own shorthand, but sometimes can't read it again when I look back at it. But I have to be very careful when I do that. And listening, you practice listening, and that sounds kind of dumb to say that, I will say. But bad signals abound in amateur radio. If you're listening to any nets, some of them are really bad. Even on repeaters, you're going to have people checking into the nets. Everybody thinks a rubber duck antenna on a handheld radio is perfect antenna. It's far from it. And if you're on the fringe of it, it's going to be noisy. And you need to train your hearing to sort out these messages from the noise. And there are some methods. You can detune your radio a little bit to get used to hearing them off frequency a little bit and noisy. And try to make sense out of the bad signal, and you can do it. And listen to conversation, any conversation on HF during a distant weather disturbance. And I've had people come into the shack, and I'll say, listen to that guy. And they say, how do you pull him out of that noise? All I hear is the background noise. That's the nature of HF. And after a while, you get used to that, and you're going to make sure you can hear them a little better when you do that. It's a little practice, and you tune your ear, and you can turn that newfound ability on and off at will, and more practice makes it become automatic. And suddenly you'll hear marginal stations on the repeater or on the HF bands, and you actually fill in the blanks with your head. Run a local rag chew net. There are different nets that are in every area. Weather standby nets, the ARES races nets, and every other net you can weasel your way into and running. It's all for good practice. I would do it. An NCS training program is working well here. We're going to be offering it up to everybody to get, now that you've been through this, to get on any net and be net control. And there will be a lineup of people. We have some that we're going to be starting with now that have, now that we're through this, everybody's going to take a turn at all the nets. And when you do it, the great idea is record everything that you do. And one of the best ways it is really to actually test your developmental skills. And you'll be your own worst critic. Keep them recordings for a while, and then compare it in a few months and see how you've progressed. And no matter, I'll say this, there's no matter what you're doing, do that. If there's something you're trying to learn, that's exactly how I practice songs that I'm learning and doing and singing on the guitar, and the way I do voiceover work. I record it and I listen back, and I'll listen to them again in 6 months and say, man, I thought I did that good, but I really sucked. But you learn as you go. And as a net control operator passing messages, you must be able to pass the NTS format messages in a radiogram, and it becomes a picture in your mind, and the ability to take and pass those becomes a lot easier as you continue, because those forms, I can close my eyes or not even close them, and I can see the forms, and I know what I'm working with, and I can do it on a regular piece of paper and still get everything. And in your local rag chew nets and everything, you can start messages. It doesn't have to be a regular net. I should say on a lot of the nets. There are some where you probably wouldn't be able to do it, but if you're passing or initiating messages everywhere until it becomes second nature, you can send your mother or an ex-girlfriend or whatever, and I love you, and dig out your old address book. I wouldn't send it to an ex. They don't appreciate that too much, unless you're drunk when you send it. So anyway, across the country you can do it, and it's really cool. They get a kick out of getting a message coming back, from a ham radio, and if you do it right, non-hams think the messages are pretty cool, and it may even trigger somebody into wanting to be a ham operator at some point, and they may check out the hobby. So, and that's something you might want to look at. Now, this is something I found what I thought was kind of cool. It was written by this guy, Bruce Winchell, I guess. He says, reproduce it freely and use it. So this is what could happen in the first 15 minutes of an emergency. Now, I don't hear any background noise. Is everybody still with me? I
Yeah,
hope I
I'm here.
didn't lose. Oh, okay, good. I hope I
I'm here.
didn't lose it. Okay, now here's the scenario. Your emergency coordinator just woke you up in the middle of your favorite TV sporting event. See, it woke you up in the middle of your favorite TV sporting event. He wants you to start an emergency net from your shack. He's at the emergency operations center. There's a ruptured gas main in a heavily populated part of your town. Other than the location, he didn't give you any more information. So you head to your Radio Shack, turn on your 2-meter rig, grab a clipboard. Your training kicks in, and you begin asking yourself questions and writing down the answers. And those could be like this. Okay, what's he know now? A broken gas main. So police, fire, gas company, and emergency management's involved. Possibly there will be an evacuation, possibly need to open a shelter. Transportation is possibly needed, and the likelihood of handicapped people in the area and the danger of asphyxiation, and all this might go on, and it might go on all night long. So that's the kind of things you're thinking about that might happen. So then you think, what kind of net should I start or open? A directed net? How many people am I likely to need? How long do I estimate the event will last? And do I need to hold some people in reserve for a shift change? And what agencies are likely to be involved? And do we have a special liaison people for these agencies? Do I have any operators who live in the affected area? Which way is the wind blowing? Kind of an important thing to know. And what's the safest route into the area? I just realized I have to shut something off in here. I had an inverter running. Chances are I would go for my car at the end of this and I'd have a dead battery. Okay, we don't have enough information, and the EC said he'd check back with us later with more. So better find out what I have available right now. So you pick up the microphone and announce that there is an emergency situation being at the point of developing, and use an open format standby net. These are things we covered earlier. Take check-ins. Ask 2 operators to go to other local repeaters, recruit people, and bring them back here for the net. Check-ins begin coming in. Tell everybody to prepare for participation assignments, and you recruit everyone to come into your shack and do some logging and phone calls for you. You also, the EC calls back and he says, to prepare for an all-nighter, you're going to need some relief shifts. So the evacuation will take place. You need to activate the Red Cross shelter at the high school. Red Cross has been notified. He wants voice and packet for the shelter. He requests 5 operators to report to a staging area and do head counts on city buses being used for evacuation. And it needs 2 RACES members to man 2-meter and packet stations at the EOC as soon as possible. Okay, so far, sounds pretty good. Okay, it goes back on the air, and he formalizes the net, requesting 2 RACES volunteers for a 4-hour shift at the EOC. One has to be able to run packet. Recruit 2 more RACES volunteers to pick up that portable packet station stored in the clubhouse and dispatch it to the high school shelter. And recruit 5 volunteers to handle head counts and assign one of them as a team leader to compile the reports and send them into the area from the north. These are all the things he's got to handle as a net operator. Next, he's going to ask for volunteer RACES qualified base station close to the staging area to liaison traffic from the staging area volunteers to the Red Cross shelter on simplex so that the HTs can be run at a low power to conserve batteries. And I'll stop there a second. That's really important because when you're using your HTs all that time, you got to conserve your battery a lot when you're on these. If you can hit a repeater or you can hit your station with lowest power possible, don't use high power. Okay, moving on. Ask a liaison station to relay the compiled totals to the NCS. Request a qualified NCS volunteer to set up a resource net and 2 shift reliefs on a second repeater. The shift reliefs are really necessary. You got to have that, otherwise you're going to be running out of people. Instruct all remaining individuals not yet assigned to a task to check into the resource net. And that was all in 8 minutes. Not bad, smooth as silk, EC, and give him progress. Okay, now he can't reach the emergency coordinator. 8 minutes, 15 seconds, logging volunteer shows up. 8 minutes and 30 seconds, your wife informs you that the toilet is plugged and she can't find the handle to the plumber's plunger. And you smile and say, well, it's taped to the tower holding that new wire antenna up. Been there. 9 minutes later into it, your 6-year-old tells you that there's a big fire in a warehouse across town. He thinks it's where you work. It's on TV and a half a mile upwind from the gas leak. 9 minutes and 30 seconds, over in the corner, under a big stack of radio catalogs, the weather radio alert begins to screech, and it's a tornado season. So about 9 minutes and 50 seconds, the phone rings, your assistant drops in, pickups loudly, and then he hands it to you. It's the EC. The telephone receiver is broken, but you managed to understand what the EC now wants you to do, to set up a Skywarn subnet and send out amateur TV guys to the warehouse fire. And you tell the EC, no problem. I know we have some people involved in amateur TV, but that's something we need to look into as well. 10 minutes and 30 seconds into it, hang up the broken phone and call the resource net man for manpower, fill the new requests, and a resource NCS says, no problem. 11 minutes into it, resource net calls back, one of the available ATV guys is on his way to the shelter as the packet operator, and the other one is your hiccup afflicted logging assistant. They're the only two. The other ATV team is out of town on an experimental underwater dual satellite linked ATV de-expedition near Easter Island, a bunch of retired guys with too much money. Well, your console is frustrated resource. You console the frustrated resource NCS and tell him to work it out. 12 minutes and 10 seconds into it, you call the EC and tell him there will be a bit of a delay because there's, no problem. 13 minutes, 5 seconds into it, your pager goes off. Nowadays, that would be a text message with a message from your boss telling you, don't bother reporting for work in the morning. Apparently, his place is on fire. 13 minutes, 8 seconds, console the wife about the loss of income by giving her a hug and saying, no problem. 13 minutes, 20 seconds later, the computer printer is connected to your packet station and begins spitting out paper. The packet station at the EOC is still programmed to your station from the last test you did. Fast and frantic search begins and ends. The right software for it is in your briefcase at work where the fire is. 13 minutes and 35 seconds into it, the liaison station calls on the radio to report that one of your staging area volunteers has just gone into labor. Her water broke and ruined her shoes, and she wants to know if it's okay for her to go to the hospital. Well, hopefully you won't have all these things happen. 13 minutes, 55 seconds, the 16-year-old kid who took the test 10 times to get his tech license calls in a priority message on his HT with his half-dead battery on a rubber duck from 15 miles out of town to report that the wind just blew over the outhouse with his grandma inside. Grandma got confused after she rolled out of the outhouse and fell in the pit. After 8 more broken transmissions, you find out that grandma's okay, but smells something awful. And that's your first 15 minutes of an emergency net from inside the control station. But out on the resource net, there's much grumbling about going to bed because nothing's happening. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what could happen. Not that it ever did, but I thought that was an amusing little story, but maybe not. Okay, the last thing we're going to touch on is the Skywarn information net. As much as we like to think of Skywarn as a little club in this area, it's really an important part of what we do. That's why we have a Skywarn training net. And now that we're through a lot of this, you're going to be getting a little closer attention to nets, and a good one is the Skywarn net. Net activation. This is Skywarn nets are activated in the following ways. One is whenever there's a National Weather Service issues, the NWS issues a severe thunderstorm, blizzard, tornado watch, or warning for the county. And severe weather anywhere in central PA starts to approach severe limits. And also severe thunderstorms, severe blizzards, tornado warnings are all in effect for the county surrounding us, and that might threaten us. These are the things that bring it up, that you'll bring up a Skywarn net for. And we have a lot of people that like to work those nets. The nets are not, need a little training, and your training here will help you to know how to run these nets. Alerting the weather net, the NCS, the net control station, using a VHF or UHF repeater, directs and maintains control over the traffic being passed on the weather net. The station also collates reports, relates pertinent material to the weather service, and organizes liaison with other area repeaters. In a big emergency, it's very often that you have nets going on other repeaters as well as your own. And you need a person to be a liaison between those other nets to monitor them and let us know what's going on. And when there are messages to be reported between them, do that. Effectively, you can't have 10 counties on one repeater during an emergency. It becomes too congested and the messages can't get through usually if it's that widespread. The net's control station might start the net upon hearing a NOAA radio alert or upon request of the National Weather Service or the ARES emergency coordinator and use the following guidelines. Guidelines for the Skywarn net are: activate the alert tone on the repeater if you have one. We do have one on the 7.6 repeater, not on the 1.1 repeater. Read the weather net activation format. That'll be given to you on the weather service. You have let me back that up a little bit. You have your own format on each net that, and if there isn't one for the Dauphin County, it will be soon. If it is not, I can't get anyone to answer me from there to know what they have on the whatever it's called now. Also, appoint a backup net control station to copy and log all the traffic and to take over an event that the NCS has to go off the air or needs relief. Ask the National Weather Service for the current weather status, and you can get that online, and you can monitor that on your computer. Check in all available operators. Instead of just having them drive by whatever listening, ask them to check in. Assign operators to priority stations and liaisons. Give severe weather report, outline, and updates. And be apprised of situations and assignments by the emergency coordinator. Periodically read instructions on the net procedures as types of severe weather report. And that's on while you're running your net. Periodically read those instructions. You're going to have downtime when no reports are coming in. Keep the net active. Don't just let it sit idle, but that's a good time to read them. Acknowledge and respond to all calls immediately and require that net stations request permission to leave the net. And that's because you don't want to be calling somebody and, oh, well, they must have left. No, we don't do that. You want to make sure that you know when people come and go. During periods of inactivity, try to keep the frequency open, make periodic announcements that a net is in progress, and close the net after it all concludes. And it's not like, well, we're going to leave now, but if you have anything, email so-and-so. No, you don't do that. Keep it running until it's over. And what do you report? It's a job of the Skywarn Net Control to use specific instructions on what is to be reported and when. If there is no activity currently on the net control station should announce the condition under which the net is functioning at least every 5 minutes. The log should also include, when possible, the location of the check-ins using the large intersections like 5th and Main or whatever, not alleys, but the large intersections. Check-ins are only taken in condition green unless the report of items listed below. Now, this particular course here has the conditions, and they are something we should be following as well here. Condition red, of course, it's a tornado, or it could be a blizzard, something major. And in the condition of a tornado red, you're going to report a tornado, a funnel cloud, a wall cloud, damaging winds over 50 miles an hour, and flash flooding. And if you've taken the any of the Skywarn training, you know what they are. And that's another thing we'll address later. There is more training coming up, advanced training, and I would recommend everybody take it. Condition red, when a blizzard warning, you're going to be reporting high winds, heavy drifting snow, freezing precipitation, sleet, new snow accumulation of 2 or more inches an hour. That's the kind of thing. And they will also that the accumulation amounts may change depending on the situation, and that is told to us by the National Weather Service. Condition yellow is severe thunderstorm warnings, and it's all the stuff above that we just talked about, plus hail. Give the size, given properly, as you learn in your Skywarn training. Flooding over the curbs and driveways, heavy rain and sustained rate of 1 inch per hour or more, and high winds. That's in your yellow phase. That's kind of the summertime thing. Where'd it go? Okay, that's the end of that. So that's why I think everybody should get involved in Skywarn, because it is an important part of the service that we provide as ARES and RACES, and it's also something that will give you a lot of practice. And the nets, when there are emergencies, it's too much for one person to handle. So you need to get involved and help out in any way you can. Now, I know there's a way to return back to that other screen, and I'm going to do that here in a second and unshare my screen. All right. Any comments from anybody at this point in time before we move on? I hear nothing. I sure hope I'm still connected. Okay.
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, Bob, I'm going to call on you you had put further training on weather on. I saw that on the Facebook page.
Yeah, advanced training is coming
Yeah.
up on June 24th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And it's on the Facebook page. You can, the address to sign up for that.
Okay. And everybody can get that off of that. Is there anything else that we need to know? I know you and Zach have been working pretty hard with a lot of things. Do you have anything else, Bob?
We put in an application to participate in National Night Out at Lower Paxton Township, George Park. They're still trying to decide if they're going to have the event, but they will let us know if we get accepted and if they're going ahead with the event. But if you want to mark it on your calendar, that is Tuesday, August the 4th from 5 to 8 p.m. That's the actual event. We'll probably be able to get in a little bit earlier to set up. And once we get confirmation, I'll post an event on the Facebook page. And we had a wash down from the American Red Cross drill, and the American Red Cross thought that it went well. and they would like to include us in some of their drills, which are typically in April and October. So hopefully we'll hear more about that.
Excellent. I'm glad that all went well. We had a kind of a disagreement with Red Cross at one point in time, and this is how we have to work it to bring back that connection that we once had, and it's a good place to be involved.
Yeah, the Eastern Pennsylvania section had a very good turnout as far as the total number of stations. There were stations across 38 states that participated, and Eastern Pennsylvania had some of the largest number of participants.
That's a good thing. To fill in the blanks a little bit, they required a lot of silly stuff from us. We had a ham Radio Shack set up in their upper floor in Harrisburg, and it was great. I mean, it was HF, VHF, UHF, everything. Big beam on top of the end of the roof, and they started acting crazy about us. They wanted us to have financial background checks, and I'm okay with a background check, but they don't have to know my finances and the way I live. And it became rather intrusive, and nobody wanted to go along with that idea. So we parted ways. Now, when there's an emergency, we often get involved, but we weren't buddies. So hopefully, with new management that comes and goes in the Red Cross, that's all gone now. So do you have anything else for us, Bob?
Nope, that's all I have for now.
Okay, Zach, you were working on putting the roster together, I know, and getting our email stuff set up, and we have a group IO address now. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. So as I've announced the last few weeks, the group does have a groups.io page. Make sure if you haven't already, go to groups.io, look up Dauphin County ARES RACES, and sign up for that. That's going to enable two things. First, it's a good communications channel in which, in addition to the private email address, the ares.harrisburg.pa, we can also send announcements and other information from groups.io, but it's bi-directional. So it's a ability for everyone in the group to be able to kind of have a conversation. So we can, you can respond and it goes to the entire group, and we can, as a team, have a discussion about different things, whether it's upcoming weather or training events or anything of that nature. In addition to that, you can log into the web page, and we're gonna be able to put files up there. So one of the takeaways from the Red Cross drill was that it would be very convenient to have a central place to put the resources that we need for these drills. And so instead of having to rely on email and losing things in email, you just know you go to the team's page and download the latest files, or you to get that information, you'll get that for the digital modes. In addition, we're going to keep that groups.io locked down to only members of the team that are officially on the roster. So we're going to be able to put some things in there like the roster list for those who are running net control. It's not going to have everything in there. We would like to make sure that we have everyone's email address and phone numbers and addresses, so that when we, as Terry mentioned, if we need to call upon someone because there's weather in an area and we need to, or there's an event in your area and we need to call upon you, it'd be good to know that, where you live. But we don't want to necessarily publish that for everyone if you don't want that information out there. So it's not going to be all inclusive in groups.io, but it's going to be a lot of information that the team needs to have access to, whether that's the handbook, the training resources, the recordings of these sessions, frequency lists for the repeaters that we're going to use, etc. We're going to utilize that to store that information, but kind of keep it a little bit secure so it's not just out there for the general public to find. So make sure to sign up for that. We'll be going through the roster of those who already have the email address in the ARES.Harrisburg, PA email address. And if you haven't already signed up, we'll be sending you a reminder email to please join that. So that's groups.io. As Terry was mentioning about the nets, there's going to be a net rotation that's going to come out. It's going to start by trying to include everyone in the net rotation. Obviously, if for some reason you cannot make the normal net times, or you don't have a radio, or you're not able to hit the repeater, or there's a conflict of some kind, we'll work with you on that. But we want to make sure that everyone on the team has at least one opportunity to run a net and practice that. And ideally, we'd want to give everyone a chance to continually practice. And so there's going to be a rotation, and let people rotate through running the net, so it's not the same people and everyone gets time to practice. But if for some reason you decide it's not for you and you don't want to have that practice, then we'll take you out of the rotation. But I think that is the two key points. So just keep an eye out on the email for information about those things. Hello. So yeah, just keep an eye out for all that information. Some people have already emailed and saying that they're interested in being a net control. So we're gonna, those who have shown interest in that, we're gonna probably, we'll put those to the front of the list, and then we'll work in everyone else, so at least everyone has a chance.
Yeah, there was a guy I just there's a gang in Perry County that are working to get a club together and so forth, and they run a net Tuesday nights on 444.55 when weather conditions allow, and they're looking for another one. But anyway, the one guy said he did the net, and he was very nervous the first time. So consider yourself to be nervous the first time you do it. It's the way it works. But don't let that disturb you. It gets easier. So, anything else, Zach? I think Zach got attacked by children.
Yeah, I think so. No, I think that's it. Anything else we'll send through the email. We try not to send out too many emails because we know everyone gets a ton of emails, but when you do see those emails come through, just keep an eye out for them, because there's might be something of interest. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I got the list finally. I had a computer that failed, and had to search for the files that we extracted from it. And in that, I did get the list finally to Bob to go through of the frequencies that are currently programmed in the Dauphin County RACES radios. And some of those became DMR repeaters, and some of them don't exist anymore. And new repeaters have shown up. And it's a very fluid thing with ham radio. You can't always guarantee that a repeater is going to be where it is. And there's an example that could happen in northern Dauphin County and Perry County. We have one on a mountain over in Newport. That radio station's for sale. And if it's sold, chances are the new owners won't want to have a ham radio repeater sitting up there. So we'll find out soon enough. And how that'll work out. But so anyway, that list that Bob's working on, that'll be available to us then at that point. And Bob, if you want to mention, I'm still there, I guess everybody can hear me. We're doing, I'll let Bob handle it. We're doing a prep for a field day this Saturday at 10 o'clock. You want to expound on that a little, Bob?
Well, just meeting up at Terry's place to get ready for field day, which is on June 27th, and they'll be getting out equipment and getting things prepared. Good opportunity to learn about some of the equipment.
Good idea.
Bring food. There's a grill there. Grill your own food, but bring stuff to share. Good time to be had by all.
All right. Now Saturday we're going to get started with this, and we'll be going through cables and all the raw materials we have. And over the past times, things went back in the wrong boxes. So there is a way to mark everything. We're going to mark everything so that once we get it out, we know where it goes, and next time everything is more organized. At the last field day, I got a little upset because things were in the wrong place and I had to go fix them. But that's just, everybody thinks I'm nuts about that sort of thing. And I handle my own company the same way. Everything gets packed the exact same way every time at every gig, so that when I come get that particular trailer or whatever and go to a job, I know where everything is. And our equipment should be that way too. So we're going to be deciding on Saturday where we're going to be putting up the canopies, possibly even assemble some of them. And there's right now the fire pit's missing. By tomorrow it should be there. I'm doing some work around there. Should have that back. We have firewood for that. So there'll be all kind of things to go on. Camping's available. But as far as Saturday, we're not going to camp out Saturday night, this Saturday. We're just there to get things organized as long as it takes. And then we'll adjourn and then come back in 2 weeks and do the whole thing. That's, any questions on that, anybody?
How long do you think that's going to last?
I don't see us taking more than 2 or 3 hours, maybe 4. I don't know. Shouldn't take long. If that long,
Okay.
just to get everything organized.
Can you put
Any
some
ideas?
directions on the IO group?
Yeah, I can give you all the I can give you all, if you want to write down. I can also put it on the IO group.
Yeah, that'd be easy.
Okay, we'll just do it that way. 232 Art Drive, Halifax. And when the GPS says you're there, you're not. You just keep driving up the dirt road, because as soon as the road opens up into fields, you're there, and you'll see the house and the outbuildings. There's several garages with tractor trailers and stuff sitting around. And I'm also going to be on 5.2 for talk-in. That's probably the easiest thing we can use. No tones needed either for simplex. Anybody else have anything they want to share? I don't hear nothing. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming in and being part of this. And I think we have a potential to make a lot of things happen in this area that haven't happened for a while, with the right group of people who are really willing to get out and do things. And I appreciate that you're all here. And somebody in the group, I have the 2 people I have lined up as the assistant ECs, Bob and Zach, and Emily is part of that too. She can't be with us most of the time right now, but she'll be involved in it pretty heavily. And we will work everybody into it as we can. Okay, I have nothing more. If anybody else has anything else, we can close this session out. And I can enjoy my sandwich I got from Sheets here in Halifax, Pennsylvania. At least they brought it out to my car tonight. Last night we did this and they didn't bring it out to the car. All right, now if I can figure out how to turn this off.
Thanks, Terry.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks, Terry.
Good night, all.
Night.
Good night.
Good job, Terry. Good night.
See ya.
Good night, John boy.
Good night, Elizabeth.